Welcome, I'm Rachel Maddow. Tonight, we turn our attention to a story that continues to unfold with consequences far beyond what anyone expected. The conflict in Ukraine, initially framed as a short, 3-day operation, has stretched into more than a year, surpassing even the duration of Russia's Great Patriotic War. The toll on ordinary citizens has been profound. Rising financial pressures, declining government revenues, and mounting regional budget crises are just some of the signs of a system under strain. Tonight, we'll examine what this prolonged conflict means for the Russian economy, its people, and the broader geopolitical landscape. Shrinking oil and gas revenue. One of the most immediate and visible impacts of the conflict has been on Russia's oil and gas sector, a cornerstone of the nation's economy. According to recent reports, revenue from oil and gas has fallen over 20% in the first 11 months of 2025, with some months seeing nearly a 50% drop. Sanctions and reduced global demand have created a challenging environment for Russian exporters, forcing them to navigate lower prices while facing restrictions on their ability to sell internationally. This decline has directly affected government income, which relies heavily on taxes and export profits from the energy sector. The human side of economic strain. Economic challenges are not just numbers on a balance sheet, they translate directly into human hardship. Surveys indicate that almost 40% of Russians do not have sufficient funds to cover basic food needs. Even official statistics, which often use lower thresholds to define poverty, do not capture the full extent of financial insecurity. While government reports claim a record-low poverty rate of around 6.5%, sociologists point out that many working Russians still struggle to meet basic living expenses. Declining living standards. The living standards in Russia, particularly outside major cities, have become increasingly precarious. 1/3 of the population reportedly lacks basic indoor plumbing, highlighting a significant gap between the country's global image and the daily realities faced by its citizens. Rising inflation and stagnant wages exacerbate the challenges, making even essential goods harder to afford. For example, public transport costs in the Moscow region have increased by nearly 16% starting in 2026, with prices having risen 24% over the past 2 years. These financial pressures are felt most acutely by those already living on the margins. Challenges in regional budgets. Regional governance in Russia has added another layer to the economic difficulties. Many local governments operate under significant budget constraints, exacerbated by the need to redirect funds to support the ongoing conflict. Reports indicate that about 60% of Russian regions are unable to meet their financial commitments, with growing deficits and rising expenditures. Funding for vital services, including healthcare, infrastructure, and social programs, has often been diverted to military-related expenses, leaving ordinary residents to contend with deteriorating facilities and insufficient public services. Impact on public services. Healthcare is a stark example of the economic strain. In regions such as Kamchatka, projects for new hospital buildings have been delayed or repurposed for military spending. Existing facilities are reported to be in poor condition, with basic repairs left undone and essential equipment lacking. This illustrates a broader trend in which civilian needs are deprioritized in favor of military objectives, creating additional challenges for local populations. Broken promises and public dissatisfaction. The financial strain has also manifested in unfulfilled government promises. Soldiers who were promised substantial bonuses for participating in the conflict have reportedly seen these commitments reduced or delayed. Similarly, residents of areas affected by military actions have faced delays in compensation for property damage, leading to frustration and protests. The perception that resources are being mismanaged or redirected has contributed to growing public dissatisfaction and a sense of economic insecurity. Comparing Russia to global economies. Analysts have pointed out that Russia's economic growth is lagging behind other major developing economies, such as China and India. While these countries emphasize rapid growth and investment, Russian officials often refer to balanced growth as a goal. However, this approach is criticized by some experts as insufficient to meet the financial needs of a country engaged in prolonged military operations. When growth stagnates, the ripple effects are felt widely. Businesses earn less, employment opportunities decline, and tax revenues decrease, creating a cycle of economic strain. Industry-specific challenges. The metallurgical sector, a traditional backbone of Russia's industrial output, is experiencing one of its most protracted crises. Steel production has dropped significantly, and domestic consumption has decreased as well. Export profitability is constrained by both sanctions and market pressures, limiting the ability of these industries to recover. The slowdown in key sectors adds to broader economic instability, affecting employment, regional income, and government revenue. The role of propaganda and public messaging. As economic hardships have intensified, there has been noticeable tension in public messaging from state and media outlets. Officials and commentators sometimes acknowledge the challenges in vague or abstract terms, reflecting the difficulty of managing both public perception and real-world problems. For example, discussions about the need for balanced growth or slowing inflation often mask the lived realities of citizens facing rising costs and limited resources. While messaging may attempt to highlight positive developments, many Russians continue to experience financial hardship firsthand. Historical context and misaligned expectations. Public frustration is also influenced by historical narratives and expectations. Comparisons to the country's success during World War II sometimes create unrealistic benchmarks for current military and economic performance. During the Great Patriotic War, external support, particularly from allied nations, played a significant role in sustaining the Russian war effort. Modern narratives that emphasize self-sufficiency overlook the complex realities of current geopolitical and economic pressures, creating a disconnect between public expectation and governmental capability. Incentive structures in local governance. The structure of local governance further complicates the economic landscape. In Russia, regional leaders are appointed rather than elected, creating incentives to prioritize alignment with federal directives over local needs. This centralization means that funds intended for public services can be redirected to meet federal targets, including military recruitment and operational support. Residents are often left with deteriorating infrastructure and services, and complaints may go unaddressed due to the lack of accountability at the local level. Social consequences of economic strain. The social impact of economic stress is profound. Citizens face rising costs for basic necessities, delayed compensation for property damage, and reduced access to public services. In regions affected by military operations, these issues are even more pronounced. Residents report difficulties in accessing healthcare, navigating damaged infrastructure, and maintaining a basic standard of living. Public protests, though sometimes suppressed, reflect the underlying frustration and sense of inequity that these economic pressures create. Broader implications for the Russian economy. The combination of declining energy revenue, reduced industrial output, rising expenditures, and local governance challenges suggests a broader structural problem in Russia's economy. Sanctions, reduced export income, and the financial demands of prolonged conflict create a cycle of constraints that affect all levels of society. Without sustainable solutions, these pressures may continue to accumulate, leading to deeper economic and social challenges. The connection between economic and human welfare. Ultimately, economic decline is inseparable from human welfare. When governments struggle to generate revenue or manage expenditures effectively, ordinary citizens bear the brunt. Reduced incomes, rising costs, and inadequate public services affect millions of people, illustrating the close connection between macroeconomic trends and day-to-day life. Analysts emphasize that addressing these challenges requires both policy reform and careful management of public resources to ensure that basic needs are met. Lessons from other economies. Looking globally, countries that have experienced rapid growth often emphasize investment, innovation, and broad-based economic engagement. Comparisons with nations such as India and China highlight the importance of maintaining dynamic economic policies, even amid external pressures. For Russia, the challenge lies in balancing short-term expenditures, particularly for military operations, with the long-term needs of domestic growth and citizen welfare. The importance of transparency and public accountability. Transparency and public accountability are central to addressing economic challenges. When government promises are delayed or unfulfilled, public trust erodes, creating further social tension. Ensuring that citizens understand policy decisions and have mechanisms to address grievances is crucial for maintaining social cohesion and stability. Without these mechanisms, economic stress can quickly translate into broader societal discontent. The path forward. While the challenges facing Russia are significant, understanding them is the first step toward addressing them. Policymakers face difficult trade-offs between military objectives, regional development, and citizen welfare. Effective solutions require balancing short-term demands with long-term planning, ensuring that basic public services are maintained, and promoting sustainable economic growth. For ordinary citizens, resilience and community support remain critical as they navigate the impacts of economic contraction and ongoing uncertainty. Conclusion. The economic fallout from the prolonged conflict in Ukraine underscores the complex interplay between national ambitions, regional governance, and citizen welfare. Declining energy revenue, industrial challenges, and regional budget deficits illustrate a system under significant stress. At the same time, ordinary Russians face tangible hardships, from rising costs to inadequate public services. Addressing these issues will require careful management, transparent governance, and policies that prioritize both economic stability and the well-being of the population. While the challenges are formidable, understanding the situation in its full context is essential for meaningful dialogue and informed decision-making about the future.